I was watching a podcast the other day, and they went some really good stuff about why relationships break up. And it's not money, it's not an affair, it's not um, mother-in-law issues, it's not a breaking conversation in ways. What they've found, and this is through the Gottman method stuff, is that the reason why, or how you can test to see which relationships will fail and which ones will be successful, it's actually just one trait. And the one trait is bids for affection. So what they've noticed is that if the other partner is accepting of the bids for affection from the other partner, those people generally have a very successful and very intimate, conversationally deep, connected relationship. Where you can see relationships going backwards and where you can actually see them breaking in half is when those bids for affection stop happening, when they start to be rejected. And from there comes the disconnection, the lack of communication, becomes a disrespect, stonewalling, all that kind of stuff. But because someone's overture or their bid for affection is being rejected, so they tend to sort of retreat in that kind of way. And it's a very interesting way to actually look at relationships at a deeper level and understand, okay, well, what are some of the traits in the really good relationships that really do well? And what are some of the traits that you can sort of just go, well, this relationship here is going to end up in disaster because of these certain traits. And the main one across thousands and thousands of tests was that rejection in the bids for affection. And once you understand that once someone starts disconnecting and starting rejecting the other person in the relationship, it really is downhill from there. And what you end up doing is trying to fix other issues or other problems. But the source of the thing is that the initial break in the relationships come from the rejection for someone's bid for affection. And when you want to repair the relationship, when you get back on board, when you want to have a good relationship, it really is around each person respecting the other person's bid for affection. It's their bid for intimacy, it's their bid for connection, it's their bid for time and presence and conversation. And when you have that part right, those relationships are highly intimate, highly connected, highly successful, happy, fulfilling, purposeful, all that kind of stuff because of this one, very basic trait that not a lot of people actually realize to put time and effort into. We put a lot of stuff in their relationships about what can we get, what can we own, what can we have, what can we, maintain materially, all that kind of stuff. What's the other person doing for us and all that kind of stuff. And it never really works in that way. So if you want to have a very, long lasting and loving connection, well, bids for affection is one of them. The other part of stuff that we've found through a lot of research as to why relationships fail is the amount of stress in a relationship. And that's a killer because if you understand how the human brain works, and a lot of people, don't, but if you got the basics down, that when people are in stressful situations, the parts of the brain that really do that, visionary, connected, emotional tolerance, emotional connection, emotional intelligence, the visionary stuff, all that kind of stuff goes offline. You go into what's, your survival mode. You go to fight or flight or freeze because you're in stress, and your body and your brain think that, you're doing this life-threatening situation. So in a stressful situation, what happens is you run purely by your survival brain, and that just basically means all the blood flows to your limbs, away from your gut. Like I say, you don't even digest food properly. That's another problem in itself. But what happens is that you become purely survival. You have no ability to have a conversation. You have no ability to have any emotional intelligence. You have no ability to then connect with anybody in any kind of way. You do speak very poorly, very badly. You come from defensiveness. You defend yourself. You don't see other people's points of view because it's pure survival mode, right? And what we sort of teach through this kind of stuff is that you cannot have a healthy resolution to any conversation in a highly stressed state because each person is not listening. They're not, when they're listening to the other person, they're not listening. They're trying to listen to come back at them. They're trying to come back at, well, I thought this and I thought, and that's not listening. That's just having your peace, right? So what we've found in very, very highly successful relationships is that they regulate their emotions. They come back and they regulate and they go, okay, right, now we can have a conversation because I'm in the right emotional state to be able to see your point of view, to see your perspective, to understand what you're saying and have empathy where your point of view is, rather than just defending our territory. Because if you're defending your territory, nothing's going to happen, right? There's no resolution in that because it's, well, Are you? And one of the other things, a bit of a tangent, right? One of the things when you see a very, very good coach or therapist or relationship coach or anything like that, they will say one of these things: do you want to be right, or do you want to solve this problem? And a lot of people want to be right about their point of view rather than solve their problem. And when they come from that point of view of wanting to be right, that's pure ego, and that's never going to solve anything, because it's all about, well, I've got to prove my point of view, which is based in insecurity, based in someone's done something to me. So back on the stress kind of thing, big tangent there. We can't have effective communication. We can't even have bids for affection if we're in a highly stressed state. And what happens today is we are so stressed out on a basis 24/7 because of our work, our environment, what we eat, lack of exercise, our mindset, our worry, all that kind of stuff adds up into a place where we're stressed 24/7. So our stress hormones, our adrenaline and cortisol, is running 24/7. And that's great if you're running from a bear. That's okay, but you're not. And if that's running 24/7, that's actually toxic. That reduces your immune system. It reduces all brain functionality. You get brain fog, memory issues, emotional issues, processing issues, conversation issues. As everything goes out the window. So if people don't realize this, that if you're highly stressed, then your ability to have a connection with someone and have a meaningful conversation is non-existent. You just can't have it. So everyone who's having these conversations or trying to have these resolutions in shouting matches and in these highly emotional, highly engaging states, in these highly stressed moments in time, they're ineffective. And they're ineffective because the brain doesn't work that way. You're trying to resolve a situation with two arms and your eyes tied behind your back, right? It just doesn't work. It's never going to work, right? So you've got to regulate your emotion, come back to your parasympathetic nervous system, come back and relax and breathe and be present and listen, because one of the worst things that people have, one of the worst traits they have across the board, is their ability to listen to their partner. And one of those things is, which I'll talk about in another episode, is understanding the partner's history, because we all bring trauma into a relationship. We all bring all kinds of stuff in, and a lot of that's actually unresolved. What happens is that we bring that in, and if that unresolved trauma comes out, then it can cause massive issues in the relationship. So people who have, again, very high performing relationships understand your partner's history and the reason why they act the way that they do. And they understand that sometimes it's not their fault, it's just what they've learned. And that's just a habitual thing, rather than just blaming them. You always do this and you always do that. And it's like, no, step back a bit. Understand why your partner behaves that way based on their history, how they're brought up, their family environment, their mindset, their beliefs, their identity, and all that kind of stuff. And then you can understand as to why they act the way that they do. But nobody does that. And that's part of what, the process that I've put together through a lot of different learnings between, the Gottman method and Buddhism, spiritualism, relationship coaching, all that kind of stuff. One of the first steps you take is actually going, okay, I guess we've got a problem over here, but that might not be the problem. Let's look back even further and go, well, what do we bring in from our history to our relationship? Where was it founded? What's your identity? What are the stories about yourself? Where's your self-confidence? How's that relating to the situation you're in? And then how's your communication from that point of view? And so what you'll find is there's situations that once you go back and understand your partner's history and how they've actually, formed their identity, then you get a bit different perspective on the problem as well too. So if you want to have an effective relationship, you want to understand what causes most breakups. One of them is bids for affection. That is hugely important. Second thing is the impact of stress on your relationship and on your daily lives. And the third thing is understanding your partner's history and their perspective of life is hugely important. You understand those three things, and you are so far ahead of the game as far as a relationship. You're in the top 1% if you do that, right? And that's why some people are very successful and some people aren't. The successful ones understand those things there, and they're really important. And that's a basis of, and that's the start of a very successful relationship. So if you want more information like this, or more videos to come, I'll talk about a lot more in the relationship space because people like that stuff. Don't forget to subscribe down below, and you'll get much more information like these tips and tricks about how to have high performance, connect with yourself, have better relationships, and also have a great career as well too. So, yeah, just subscribe and more to come. See you later.